Students, welcome back to One Stop Law. Today's lecture will be on the second factor which vitiates our free consent to a contract, that is, on Section 11 of the Indian Contract Act, which provides for undue influence. Now, what is undue influence? As per Section 16 of the Indian Contract Act, it says that when the parties to a contract are in relationships in such a way that one party can dominate the will of the other and uses the unfair advantage so gained to obtain the consent of the other party, then the consent is said to have been obtained by undue influence. So, students, we see basically there are two major requirements under this section. That is, first, one of the party to the contract must be in a dominating position to the other. Now, dominating position means one of the party is in a position of active confidence to the other. That is, active confidence means he is able to influence, okay, or exercise some dominance over the will of the other. That is, he is such a person that the other party cannot say no to him. Okay, so basically, this influence, this active confidence is by way of having some fiduciary or fiduciary relationship between the parties. You can see the instances are where a party has a real or apparent authority over the other, or where a party has a fiduciary relationship with the other, or number 3, where a party or a person enters into a contract with another whose mental capacity is affected either temporarily or permanently. So here this position of active confidence is very important to understand. So by the definition you can make out that here the parties should not be such that they are strangers to one another or they don't know each other. When we talk about a party exercising a dominance over the other, or having a position of active confidence, that means the party must be known to each other. And that is where our first bullets, the first tick says that the party must have a real or fiduciary relationship with the other. That is, they must have a relationship between each other. It may be a real, it may be some fiduciary relationship. Okay, like real relationship means where the one party exercises some real control over the other. That is, maybe their employee. Now it is very difficult for employee to say anything to the employer. Similarly, one is the master, the other is a servant cannot, can hardly say no to the master. Or say it is a relationship of doctor patient, where patient always relies on the doctor completely. So the first bullet says when the party has a real or apparent authority over the other, the relationships can be master servant, doctor patient, or say employer employee. The second one says when a person has a fiduciary relationship with the other party. Like fiduciary relationship here means a relationship of trust and confidence, like we see between a parent and a child. Now a child has complete trust over his on his parent, on its parent, and therefore a child hardly can say no to the parent, right? So child always has that place of trust and confidence for the parent. So therefore if it is a contract between a parent and a child, then if it is kind of an unconscionable, I will come to that last part, but yes, a parent and a child can come under this category of undue influence. Second relationship can be between a solicitor and client. Okay, that is a legal advisor and client. When a client goes to a legal advisor, he surrenders completely to the legal advisor, on this hope that the solicitor will give the best advice to him, or say will defend him in the best possible way in the court. And therefore the client kind of has complete trust and confidence, has to have complete trust and confidence on his solicitor. And the last point says when a person enters into a contract with another whose mental capacity is affected either temporarily or permanently. So it is very easy to kind of manipulate, or say uh, divert, or get hold of a person's mental condition who is maybe feeble, or who is maybe kind of sick, or kind of who has like a very old person who is suffering with some disease. Now this person always tries to look for help on others. The person tries to look for sympathy and compassion, and on whoever person shows that sympathy and concern for that old person, the person kind of has a kind of reliance much confidence and trust on that person. So in this way, taking advantage of this condition, or no, of this mental condition and this illness of that old person, this person can take advantage. So now students, if you have to look into the essential ingredients of section 16, you can see there are three basically. First, one of the party is in a dominating position, like one of the party is in an advantageous position over the other, so that he can dominate the will of the other. The second point, such party enters into a contract with a person whose will he can dominate. Okay, so there must be a contract between those two parties. And the third, the most important one, the transaction must appear from its face unconscionable. That is, the transaction which they have done, the contract between these two parties, from the face of it, prima facie, must seem unconscionable. Like we studied all those examples, right? Master servant, lawyer client, doctor patient, ill person, and any a sick and ill person with a, a near relative of his own. So an employer employee, there can be other relations also, like spiritual guru and disciple. Generally a disciple does anything what the spiritual guru says. So all these cases, we see one person is in an advantageous position, and there must be a contract between them. If it is a normal contract, then no problem. But if the contract from the face of it looks unconscionable, like suppose a lawyer defends his client in a court, wins a case for the client, and the client has given all his property to the client, to the lawyer as gift. Now this is kind of very much strange and unconscionable. The lawyer has done his job, the client will just pay him, okay, whatever his due, his fair and just fees might be. So some gift is okay, but still gifting all property of the client, what about the legal heirs and other person of the client, children, parents, whoever it is? How can a client gift everything he has to a lawyer for defending a case in the court? The contract from the face of it must look unconscionable. Same goes for spiritual guru and disciple. We will do some case laws on this in our next video. So this the most important condition is that the person, the contract must be unconscionable from the face of it, and the two persons must have, this one person must be in a dominating position to the other. Then comes the important part, the burden of proving that the contract was exercised in good faith, okay, that there was no exercise of undue influence and it was all done in healthy spirit, uh, is on the person who is in this advantageous position. So now this is something different from the last factor we studied, that is coercion. In coercion we studied that the person who pleads that his consent was not free, that he was put under some threat or pressure, the burden is on him to prove in the court that you know uh, the coercion was exercised on him. But in this case, this is the opposite. Like once a person goes to the court and pleads that my consent to this contract was not free because of undue influence, now the burden is on the party who is in a dominating position. Like in a master servant, the burden will be on the master. In an employer employee relationship, the burden will be on the employer. In a parent child relationship, the burden will be on the parent. In a contract between spiritual guru and disciple, the burden will lie on the spiritual guru. And same goes for doctor patient and lawyer client, the burden will be on the doctor and the lawyer to prove in the court that the transaction was done all in good spirit, that the other party gave everything to him voluntarily, although the contract seems unconscionable, but it was done with free consent. So the burden of proving the good faith of the consent is on the party exercising this dominance over the other, and not on the party who says that his consent to it was not free. So this is very important. We have a corresponding section in our Indian Evidence Act as well. You can see I have written that section 111 of the Indian Contract Act, which says that the burden to prove good faith in a contract in certain transactions is on the person who has that dominance over the other, and not on the weaker person. Okay, it is the burden to prove that the consent was not free is not on the person whose will was so dominated, but is always on the person who has this active confidence over the other. Now we come to the last part of undue influence, that is section 19A, which gives us the effect of undue influence on a contract. Section 19A provides that the contract will be voidable, But again, there are two conditions. Like, first is any such contract, that is where an undue influence has been exercised, may be set aside absolutely. That is, the party going to the court at whose option the contract is voidable, that is the weaker party over whom the dominance has been exercised, he can go to the court and set aside the contract absolutely with the intervention of the court. Or in the second part it says, if the party, that is this weaker party, has received or is entitled, the party who is entitled to avoid such contract has received some benefit under it, okay, then upon such terms and conditions as the court seems just and equitable. Which means that, suppose, this weaker party, I gave you the example of gift, like the client had gifted all his property to the lawyer, so in this case there was nothing to be received by the client. But think of a other situation, maybe the client has just written off all his property to the lawyer at a very negligible amount. The lawyer has paid that amount, maybe a property of worth 1 crore, the client has given it for rupees 10,000 to the lawyer, okay. Now this 10,000 rupees has been received by the client, so it says in the second condition, again, the of course the client can go to the court and get the contract declared void by the intervention of the court. He has every right to avoid this contract because his consent to it was influenced by undue influence, and he has every right to avoid it. The contract is voidable. But because he has received some benefit, that is, for example, he has received rupees 10,000 in this case from lawyer, then on such terms and conditions as the court may prescribe, means the court will obviously ask him that you refund that rupees 10,000 to the lawyer and you take back all your property. Like, the client can also not be allowed to have everything, like you get back your property as well as you return that rupees 10,000. So the right to avoid that contract under voidable contract remains with the weaker party. But if he receives some advantage or some benefit out of this unconscionable contract, if he has received any such benefit, that also has to be balanced, means that should go back to the person exercising that dominance, and he should get back his property or whatever he has given under this contract. That is all about the concept of section 16, undue influence, with its effect on contract under section 19A. All right, thank you students, see you in the next lecture.